Thank you for joining us for another discussion about maladaptive daydreaming. Today, we are going to talk about me jumping back into maladaptive daydreaming and what I got out of it. I have with me Glen San Juan, who is a hypnotist who works on maladaptive daydreaming and other things like weight loss and anxiety.
I'm here with Nicole Vetter, former maladaptive daydreamer and content creator. It's great to have you on, Nicole.
Thank you as well.
So we kind of right after our last recording, we had a chance to talk about how you went back into the maladaptive daydreaming world a little bit,
Mhm.
and I'm just kind of curious if we could, well, not curious, but I'm sure everybody else out there would like to know too. What made you want to go back into that maladaptive daydreaming world?
So we've talked, I think one of our last sessions and maybe a few others, we talked about how a lot of things came up for me
Hmm.
and I'd been trying to process and do all the work to try to get past all the loneliness and the crazy feelings that have been coming up.
Yeah,
And I kind of got really stuck and my mindset was in a horrible place and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to move forward. And I was just looking for anything to try to understand more about what was going on. And one night, a couple weekends ago, I was just sitting by the fire. I was like, tonight's a great night. I'm going to enjoy the fire, relax. And usually it's something I would have done with my, paracosm in the past. So like it definitely came up for me. And I was like, you know what? Let's do this. I'm going to engage. I'm going to learn a little bit, see what kind of comes up, see what my feelings are or like telling me, any other insights that I can kind of glean for this, right? But also, I kind of wanted like relief in the moment to kind of put all this away and be like, all right, like, how do I move forward? What do I need to do? I don't know that I had like that intense of a plan, but I will say it worked out really well.
sure.
So that was really kind of what was going through my head is I was, trying to enjoy the weekend and just get out of the mess that I've kind of found myself in.
Sure. What kind of thoughts did you have going through your head? Like, what kind of questions did you have for yourself as you're, sitting at your fire? And I mean, especially those who are maladaptive daydreamers, they can really take themselves really in and
Mhm.
experience that. And I'm just kind of curious, like, how did that work out for you? Revisiting, I guess, that world again.
Yeah. I mean, number one, I think it was shockingly a lot easier to jump in
Hmm.
because in the past I had given up maladaptive daydreaming for a full year and it was really hard getting back into it. So I was
Sure.
surprised that after 10 months, it was that easy to just be like, okay, we're good. I can do this. I thought
Sure.
it would be a little bit more kind of work and like to get my mind back there,
Sure.
but that was really a lot easier. I don't know that I was looking for any specific insights, or what I was searching for. I just felt really stuck. I was really overwhelmed with a lot of the emotions that were going on, and I was finally kind of understanding what all these emotions meant, that it was loneliness that I was dealing with, but I
Sure.
didn't know like really what to do with it. And I think one of the most important things that I learned was that so I was raised in Russia. So like my first 8 years of life were in Russia. And as a child, I had spent all of that time living in like a three generational household. So
Hmm.
the first place I've ever lived, it was me, my mom, my mom's brother, my grandmother, her husband, and my great grandmother. So it was just this huge group of people. So there's always different people to engage with. There's always someone there. And then after my mom married my stepdad, we lived at like our apartment, but like two doors down was my grandparents or his parents. So I feel like
Sure.
I've always just had this community. And I think when you have that, right, there's different places to go for different things and different needs. And I
Sure.
think when I came to America and I lost that, and I just had my parents who were not very good caretakers, I think I lost a lot of that. And I needed a place to like play with ideas and like I'm neurodivergent, like I have ADHD. I need to like my brain needs to kind of move around and do things.
Sure.
And I think part of what maladaptive daydreaming does for me is that, right? So I think one of the first things that I realized was it's a lot easier for me to troubleshoot when I can have a conversation, even with someone that's not there, versus me
Hmm.
just trying to play it through my mind is not. I think that's why I felt so stuck, is because I wasn't able to like have the conversations and like move through it. And
Sure.
I guess like what I've learned from that is in the meantime, that might be something that works. But what I need, it sounds like, is to build the types of relationships where I can kind of have those conversations with someone. yeah, I guess, whatever that looks like. I don't know what that looks like, right? And I think that's fine.
Sure.
Like, I'm not looking for necessarily a quick fix. I'm looking for, okay, these are the needs I need to meet, and they're not being met, which is what's causing a lot of frustration. And then I'm going to continue to figure out like how I can build those needs, how I can build those relationships. And I'm fine with like, I get that it's all these things will take time.
Sure.
But I think back to what I was saying about, I had lived in this like three generational household.
Yeah.
I set up my paracosm the same way, right? Where like my paracosm is made up of like all these different people, but in my head, like it's just this community and like everybody's always there and always kind of hanging out.
Hmm.
So I think that's really interesting. And I think for me, that's like, it shows a lot about culture, and that like maybe I've always kind of felt weird living in America. And I think it's because I do come from a different culture, and I do have different like expectations and understandings and needs.
Right.
Um, and so, yeah, so I think that's really interesting, but it's funny because I don't actually like groups of people. Like I don't like hanging out in like five groups of friends, five people, in a group of friends. I
Yep.
don't like that. Like I always feel like I don't know how to interact, which like I'm not understanding how this is supposed to work. So yeah. But either
Sure.
way, I think it just kind of it showed me all of these things that I'm like, okay, all right, like these are my needs. This is the thing that works really well.
Hmm.
Because over the past 5 years, as I've been doing my healing, I have been engaging in maladaptive daydreaming, and I've accomplished a lot, right?
Hmm.
But at most of that time, except for this past year, I've had that paracosm to kind of, talk through things and be like, okay, that worked, that didn't work. And just have
Sure.
that like, I mean, they're not real, they're not really giving me feedback, but like, it's enough for my brain to be like, okay, cool.
Sure. Enough to
So,
be satisfied in your head that you have an answer, even if
right.
it's not necessarily somebody else, there's at least some feedback that's satisfying something.
Right. So I don't know if like I need to actually be having a conversation or if I should be journaling. And these are all the things that I'm going to be playing around with now. But I
Sure.
think, like nobody's ever recovered from maladaptive daydreaming that we really know of. Right. And like I'm literally
Hmm.
just like jumping in and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what works. I don't know. Like I don't feel weird about engaging in it again because I'm just like, I learned a lot. So it was worth my time and it was worthwhile. Even though a lot of really my content is focused on specifically not engaging in it and recovering from it. But I think it's
Sure.
a complicated thing that I'm going to have to continue to like adjust and figure out things and play around with things and adapt. And eventually there'll be, a much more comprehensive, okay, like this is what works and this is what doesn't. But also I'm sure that everyone's going to have different needs. Not everyone who has maladaptive daydreaming has ADHD probably, right? Maybe, I don't know. That's a really good question, right? So yeah, that's kind of where I ended up with that.
Sure. I think it's really interesting that it's like your subconscious kind of filled that void that you had, like, or because I mean, it's like you said, you were used to having multiple generations in your life, and suddenly for that to not be there anymore. I mean, whether they were positive, neutral, negative, whatever in your life, they were still there, and that your subconscious wanted that still once you came over to America. I think that's really interesting. That
Yeah,
was kind of like the default in your mind to try to like satisfy that.
because additionally, as a child, I did do daydreaming. Like I have memories being in Russia, living in that, three generation household with all those
Hmm.
people and daydreaming. I have those recollections, right? But
Sure.
at the same time, I have significantly more in like memories of maladaptive daydreaming in the United States.
Hmm.
And and like I said, I think being left alone with my parents was really like a hindrance to me, right?
Sure.
Where I did really enjoy and I got a lot out of like that first household I lived in, right? So like one of my tattoos, this is from my great grandmother because she passed when I was 5.
Sure.
She's really somebody that meant a lot to me, and I had a strong connection with her. So,
Sure.
when she died when I was 5, that was really rough. Yeah, so I feel like it's just so interesting. I don't know. I don't know what I'm
How
gonna
it's
do.
connected. Well, I think it's interesting about how you said that, because you just said that it was it was stronger when you came to America, but your parents were also a lot more, negative. It makes me wonder, I wonder that was kind of the compensation that your brain was trying to do.
Right.
Trying to like, okay, I'm having more adverse stuff going on around me, and my comfort level that was back in Russia isn't there. So there's like a compensation effect that's happening because of that. And that's why you remember it more clearly.
Right. But also imagine, right? I'm a child and I was already learning Russian in my school in Russia because most other countries, they teach children various languages and most people can speak more than 2 languages.
Sure.
But so I was already learning English. So by the time I got here, I knew some basics and I learned English pretty quick because I'm a kid.
Yeah.
And I kind of, as an immigrant child, there's always kind of that, you kind of start taking on adult responsibilities because your parents are looking to you to translate a lot of the time. For
Sure.
them, it's a lot harder to be learning the language. So in
Sure.
addition to like my parents not being great caretakers, I did also have to take on certain responsibilities, even though I'm a kid. And I
Mhm.
think it's just all these little stressors just kind of build up and your body's like, I need to get out of this, right?
Right.
The PTSD book I read, or the complex PTSD book I read a few months ago that we talked about, or I talked about in my content, she talked about the things that she did, when her mom was abusing her and her dad was just neglectful. And she needed an escape. And her escape was staying up all night and like, being on AOL or, like in the chat rooms and stuff.
Yep.
And like that was what she needed to kind of survive. That was the only thing she could hold on to. And I
Mhm.
think for me, it was probably maladaptive daydreaming.
Sure. Because it's one of those things that I know I've mentioned in one of my videos that it's free and no one has to know about it, right? And no one has to, when you have like the internet, you have AOL, it's a messenger. Anyone can peek around the corner to see what you're writing or something. It's a lot more, it's a lot more subtle if someone's just pacing in their room or just like laying in bed doing their thing. And something I was kind of curious about, like since you did go, since you kind of dove back to kind of see what was going back to your maladaptive daydreaming world, what would you say was the biggest takeaway you got from that?
That I got a lot out of it, and it wasn't necessarily emotional support. Like, I was sitting by the fire and I was like, you know what? I'm going to welcome them back in and I'm going to hang out with them for a couple hours. Let's see what happens.
Sure.
And first, it was a lot of emotions that flooded in. And I was like, God, I missed you guys so much.
Yeah.
Like these are friends that I've had for like, oh my God, at least 10 years, right? Because I've gone
Sure.
through variations. But
Sure.
and it's just like hanging out with an old friend that you haven't spoken to in like a year. It's the best feeling ever. So, and there was definitely some relief there. But I think overall, what I got out of it is that I have other needs that aren't necessarily like those emotional needs. Like, it's not necessarily that I, need someone to be around me all the time. It's that it's really helpful for me to be able to have a conversation with someone and just be like, I need to like spit everything out for what happened in my day or my week. And then I need to hear that, process it, and be like, okay, now I need to know what to do. Like, I am just somebody who's like, it's very important for me to use my voice.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a pretty good orator. And I just think that, like, for me, that's what works. Everybody's gonna be
Sure.
different. Like, I know some people love to journal, and
Sure.
that's also why talk therapy really works for me. So I always say that talk therapy is not going to work for everyone. Somebody might need a journal, somebody might need a different type of therapy
Yep.
process in different ways. And there's a lot of tools out there. But for me, that really works. And I do get a lot of stuff out of it. I will say something and then I automatically catch it and go, okay, got it. Cool, moving on.
Sure. It's just
So
that it able to speak your mind, and even if you don't necessarily get the feedback that you're looking for, just
sure.
being able to like let that go, having that emotion let go. There is some relief behind that.
I don't even know that I'm looking for feedback, right? And I think this
Yeah.
interesting thing about communication in our society is when you're going to someone and you're like, I'm miserable, this sucks, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I have this issue at work or this issue, people
Mhm.
always try to give you advice. And the thing is not to like inflate my own ego, but I'm at a point right now where I've done so many different things over the past 5 years that it's actually really hard for me to ask advice because I don't really know anyone that's like put in this type of effort. I mean, I do know a couple of people, but it's really hard because I'm getting advice that I'm like, that like you're telling me advice that's for you. That's not for me. Like that's
Right.
just not gonna work.
Sure.
And so I think what actually helps more is asking questions. So, if somebody comes to you and they're like, oh, I'm so miserable, ask them questions. And I think asking some specific questions kind of makes the person think, and you can pivot and rephrase things and change the way you're thinking about something. And
Yep,
that's what's valuable. I feel like
absolutely.
sometimes when I'm maladaptive daydreaming and I'm, engaging my paracosm and we're taught, like, I'll be like, oh, this sucks. I've been dealing with this for so long. Why is this taking so long? Why can't I just process this, move forward past it? I think a lot of the times it's really just a simple question that comes up that makes me go, okay, I'm looking at this wrong. Like, I think that's been the past week for me, is realizing that I've been looking at everything wrong. And it's not, what do I need to add? It's like, what can I kind of make room for? And really,
Yeah,
it's just a question.
exactly. It's one of those things where, people love to give advice, but the thing is, how many people actually like being told what to do? You know, that's a big part of, like, for my practice, for my hypnotherapy practice, I don't give advice because the thing is, clients have everything they need. They have all the answers there. It's just a matter of, like, how does it work in their mind?
Right.
So that's where, when you tell people, oh, you need to journal. Oh, you should make a list of things you need to do. Most people, they may not say it, but automatically their mental defenses, like, go up.
Yes, they're
Instead,
not going to do the thing you're
I'm not,
saying.
right. I don't want to listen to it. I don't care if you have like 2 PhDs or whatever. Like, that's not going to work for me. I don't want to do it, or I've tried it.
Yeah.
And so it's better just to get people thinking.
Right. Yes. So
You
that's why
know,
asking the question could be like, have you tried journaling or this, and give them several options so that you're not
hmm
being like, you should do this. It's like, have you tried this, or this?
hmm
And then they can be like, oh, there's things that maybe I haven't used. But
Sure.
yes, I see that all the time because I am genuinely somebody that will do anything and everything that I can try and do to like figure it out. Like my boss said that to me the other day. She's like,
Yeah.
I know you're gonna be fine because you're gonna keep trying to figure it out. You're gonna keep trying things. But it can definitely be hard because like I'll be in
Sure.
therapy and I'm bitching and moaning to my therapist. That's a horrible way to say it. But and she'll be like, well, have you thought about this? And I'm like, yep, done it. And
hmm
it's like I want to like be supportive and be like, you're like, that's a great point. I should do more of that, right? Like just making good points, but it's so funny because I really have tried so many things.
Sure. And that's the thing, because I mean, in a way, and I mean, I don't, not to press on anybody, but even in a way, it almost is kind of insulting when someone tries to tell you, oh, hey, you should really listen to this podcast. You really should start journaling because it'll work miracles. But everybody's different and everybody's going to experience it like a different way. So
Right.
that's
So
why
everybody's going to
it's
have different needs. But I think additionally, how many times does somebody give you advice and
mhm,
you know that they haven't done that work?
right.
And that's the hard part is like I've like the way that I've attacked, my life or like tried to like heal is by really like attacking everything from like physical health, mental health, spirituality, like everything that I could work on.
Yeah.
And then somebody tries to give you advice and you're like, okay, but you've only done like this one thing and I've done all these things. Like, I don't know that you
Right.
can be giving me
Right.
advice
And it's
right
so it's
now.
like and I mean, they mean well, right? And they're just trying to help, but at the same time, it's like, listen, I got these I got, usually it's not just one issue that someone has, there's usually a whole bunch of other things that are related. And it really is different for every single person. And
Right,
I mean, you can't just, and that's why not everybody can just take some pills and just say, hey, this is all I've needed in my whole life.
right.
It's different. So, I mean, just to kind of, going back to maladaptive daydreaming, something I was thinking about, how you said that, boy, it was so wonderful to talk to all my friends after so long, and you're having these emotions. Would you get tempted to go back into that to talk to them? Because that was pretty awesome, right?
It was awesome, yes. But additionally, right, there's still so much there that requires time and attention, and I'm not willing to give that.
Mm,
So, right, I'm kind of in this space right now where I've learned a lot and I can see the benefits of daydreaming and what it can give me. But I also see like this is where I want to be. I don't know how I'm going to get here. I don't know how I'm going to fulfill these needs. So I'm kind of here in the middle. And I think what I'm going to go forward and do is passively engage. I'm going to call it that, where I'm not going to create storylines. I'm not going to add or take away characters. I'm not going to be doing intense daydreaming, but what I'm going to allow myself to do is if I'm driving after work, I can like have the conversation about like what's been going on today and like just because it really is a powerful tool for being able to work through something when you need to like verbally have a conversation.
Sure.
But I'm not willing to put in the time and effort to like do the maintenance of daydreaming.
And all the relationships that are going on
Right.
in there,
And
right?
like I'm gonna stay away from, I mean, I'm still gonna probably watch a movie every week, but I'm not going to do anything that I think will trigger me. And I'm
Sure.
not, it's just, yeah, I think that's the part that I'm not willing to kind of add into because like let's say I do get triggered and I add a new character and like I
Hmm.
complicate things. And then there's definitely going to be a point where it's going to detract from my life because I'm going to get emotionally involved and, I might not be able to fall asleep or whatever, all those things that happen.
Sure.
But like I said, there's still so much value from it, and I think also, I think the other thing that I learned too that we didn't really touch upon was that it'll like this is when I would rest, right? Because I got really sick in Bali because I was not resting. I wasn't even sleeping the month before.
Sure.
And that's what I would do is I would just sit on the porch, enjoy, nature, but I would be kind of daydreaming, letting my mind just go all over the place. And like I said, I don't know these answers. I've really only known that I've had ADHD since November, October. So
Sure.
I'm newly diagnosed and I'm still learning about what it is, how my brain works and what I need. So I'm willing to take it as a tool to give myself like meet those needs so that I can continue troubleshooting because I find that super helpful. But
Sure.
yeah, I'm not jumping into the pool. Like, I'll
Well,
check the pool for, nice water temperature, but that's it.
I mean, that's one thing that a lot of people like to mention about how much time they've wasted. Do you know how much time you spent just in that little, just to going back,
I mean, I
would
was
you
gonna
say?
step by fire anyways, and whether I just sat there and listened to music or whether I had a conversation, I feel like I got more value out of that conversation than the time that was lost.
Okay.
But if I did get triggered and started crafting, characters and paracosms, that's where
Hmm.
to me the time would be lost because I'd rather be putting that time into my relationships IRL, so that those relationships can help feed my needs, right? And being able to like have those conversations and process with people, right?
Sure.
But I think even with that, kind of what we just talked about is how do I build that relationship with someone where I can say, hey, I'm feeling horrible, I'm really down, I'm struggling with this. And instead of somebody trying to tell me what to do, like how can I form that connection with someone where we're like troubleshooting and asking questions and playing around? And I think that's more interesting and that's the opportunity and that's the beauty of it, right?
Sure.
But I think also specifically, why am I in this position where it's easier for me to have a conversation with my paracosm than with a real human being? It goes back to the same stuff, right? Is because I was trained, by my experiences that it's not safe to interact with people and that I'm not going to get my needs met, which is not true. So it's kind of like that retraining piece.
Sure.
Uh, yeah, it's just part of the healing.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's, I mean, it's great that you can actually look back and like actually have that perspective. I guess, what's the best way to say it? Now that you've overcome your maladaptive daydream, once you're like over on the other side of the fence, that you can actually see that perspective
Yeah.
and that you can actually, you've already made your way out. You've seen the way out, but it's interesting, like just kind of peeking over the fence to kind of see.
Right.
So I guess one of the last things I want to ask, I mean, after going after talking to your paracosms, going back to seeing all those familiar faces that you knew, how did you feel afterwards? Like, I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there that after they've been daydreaming for hours on end and they feel terrible for all the time that they could have been sleeping, studying, whatever. How did you feel afterwards about yourself?
I don't I don't think that I felt guilty or anything. I kind of don't see the point of it anymore, right? But I think also I'm trying to teach myself to not do that because I've been taught so much shame and guilt over my life
Sure.
that I'm not really willing to accept it, especially from other people. I really don't see the point. Like that emotion is not going to do anything positive for me. And I'm a human being. I'm going to continue making mistakes and failing, and that's perfectly fine. So
Sure.
there wasn't any bad feelings. It was really just kind of relief that I had some understanding to go forward with, and
Yeah.
I knew what kind of direction I needed to go in.
Sure.
And, essentially that, like, okay, cool. Like I understand more of what my needs are, and now I can kind of start to figure out what that's going to look like.
Sure.
But I think there was a lot of emotions floating around, and definitely a lot of relief. So,
That's
yeah.
awesome to hear. And I like how you said how you don't exactly know where exactly you're going to end up, but you know the direction of which you're going.
Right. And that's the most
So
important
it's,
part, right? Because we can't
yeah.
control what's going to happen. But now I
Yeah.
know, okay, like these are the things I've been avoiding. And funny enough, these are the things I have to work on. So, here we go.
Yep. Just
Yeah.
having that path to at least get yourself started on, which I think there's a lot of people out there that, they don't necessarily have that or they don't know where to start. I
Yeah.
think it's awesome that you're already on your way.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for another discussion about maladaptive daydreaming. My name is Nicole Vetter, and you can find me on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram.
Yep. And I'm Glen San Juan. Thanks for having us. You can find me on YouTube. Well, social media in general. Let's go with that. You can find me on there. We got the links below.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, guys.